Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Redlands Unified School District in Redlands, California holds the disgusting distinction of having employed the largest number of known sexual perpetrators per student. The district serves about 21,000 students, and over the past 10 years, more than 20 teachers or administrators have been accused of sexually abusing their students, making it number one of all of California's 1,037 school districts. Many children have suffered from the negligence of the adults in charge, including 2 young men molested by Sean Ramiro Lopez, who have since committed suicide. Currently, 7 men who were also molested by Lopez between the ages of 12 and 14 and are now in their early 30s, are suing the district for their dereliction of duty. Good for them. Lopez is currently serving a 74-year prison sentence following a 2005 conviction. Joining me now to discuss that is Morgan Stewart, the attorney representing the survivors. So, Morgan, thanks for being here and for your work on behalf of survivors.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it.
So, talk about the culture of cover-ups that is in many schools across the country.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and unfortunately, while we've gotten better, school districts still cover up sexual abuse, and they do it for monetary reasons. Obviously, they want to hide perpetrators. They've done what we call passing the trash, where they move perpetrators from one school district to another. They don't reveal things to new school districts, and it's really a money saving and professional saving feature that districts have just been involved in for way too long.
And so, I used to work with a nonprofit called Education Action Group, and one of the things that we talked about was passing the trash and how these school districts, they would hear of an accusation, and they would look at the situation, and the union would, in particular, would say, well, we can, you can pursue this, but we're going to fight you over tenure, and it's going to cost you $300,000 to have the tenure fight. So if you don't want to have that fight, why don't you pay the alleged $100,000 and a positive letter of recommendation, and this will all just, we'll all just move on. And so then what happens is that individual then moves to a new school district, maybe in another state, no idea about what happened in that previous district, and they do the same thing. And it seems to me like nothing will change until people start getting charged, administrators, teachers, whoever in the school district who knew about it, they need to be charged and held accountable, not only in the new school district, but in the previous school district.
Yes, absolutely. And Redlands serves as a prime example of that. We had a case in the early 2013-14 timeframe. That's one of the cases we resolved a couple of years ago, where the HR director, human resources director, in that case was found destroying sexual abuse documents for a perpetrator in the district in the middle of a police investigation. It was discovered that the assistant superintendents and the principals knew of accusations of abuse against these individuals, which is a violation of mandated reporting laws, and the district attorney refused to prosecute those individuals until we start holding these people accountable. If you're destroying documents in the middle of a sexual abuse investigation, you should be prosecuted, but they weren't, and one of them still works in the district. So until we start holding those people accountable, we're not going to see any change in the administration. Perpetrators are going to continue to abuse kids. You can't necessarily control that except by doing proper training. But you can change the culture of failures in administrations, like Redlands, if you start holding people accountable and they start getting prosecuted.
So how does the accountability come in? Is that from the school board? Is that from the parents and the taxpayers? What does accountability look like?
I think it starts at parent level. I think it starts at the school board. I think the school boards need to hold everybody accountable. I think the district attorneys, the police, I mean, we've got plenty of groups along the tier that can hold people accountable, and they don't, and that's the biggest problem.
So how did this happen in Redlands?
Well, the Redlands is sort of a unique situation, and you kind of got to go back to it being sort of the jewel of the Inland Empire, because I think that's part of the problem here is that it held itself up as such a fantastic institution. It let its guard down to an extent. And if you go back to our current case, Sean Lopez, which I would look at as the sort of seminal case out in Redlands that sort of started its domino effect, if you would, of perpetrator after perpetrator after perpetrator. In that case, what we've discovered is the administration, principals, superintendents, assistant principals, counselors, all knew of inappropriate behavior by Sean Lopez and all turned a blind eye to it. They excused it. They said, "Oh, it's just he's acting inappropriately, but we've warned him and stopped."
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that, and I look at that as sort of the seminal case of going, yeah, you kind of got away with it once. Yes, Lopez was charged and he went to prison, but nobody was held accountable within the school district.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody lost their job. Nobody was disciplined. Nobody got anything put against them. They didn't get charged. Nobody said that you failed to do a mandated report. Everybody got their pension. Everybody got their union benefits. And the district went, well, we got away with it once. Let's, if it comes up again, we'll repeat the same pattern. And you see that pattern repeated over and over and over amongst 20 plus perpetrators in the district for the next 20 years. And we saw that they had huge, lengthy perpetrators operating in the district. Kevin Kirkland, Laura Whitehurst, and operated for many years and got many warnings. And each time those perpetrators got their behavior excused. Rather than hold them accountable and rather than hold the administration accountable, they got their behavior excused. And those same administrators, a lot of them are still in the Redlands today. And until you start sweeping those people out, you're going to see the same conduct. And it's going to be the same bad behavior. And yes, I think Redlands is a shining example of a district that has just completely screwed up their process.
So your clients, they started getting abused when they were 12 to 14 years old. Now they're in their early 30s. What have their lives been like since that time? They've been rough. I mean, obviously we know of the suicides by victims, but the survivors have had it just as rough. We've got alcohol, drug problems. We have failed relationships. I mean, these guys are in their 30s, and as everybody knows, sexual abuse is kind of the hidden, emotional distress problems. Mm-hmm.
It's not something everybody talks about, but you carry it on a daily basis, and it's a lifelong lasting problem. And that's kind of what amazes me about this district. I mean, we're fighting this case out. They've essentially said, "Oh yeah, we screwed up," but we don't think the kids are as damaged as you say. These are, we're talking male kids in the middle of puberty who were abused by a trusted adult, male member, videotaped, photographed, and you're going to say, that they have drug and alcohol problems. Well, they're not that damaged. If nearly 20 years later or 20 years later, they're not that damaged. I mean, we know that's a ridiculous argument and one just meant to save money.
Mm-hmm. What kind of justice are they seeking?
They want changes in Redlands,
Hmm.
as does everybody. In our cases in the recent years, Redlands has tried to make changes, but I don't think they're enough, and I don't think they're enough because of the fact that they continue to employ people who are culpable in these abuses until they start cleaning the district up. Until the superintendent says, "I've had enough. I'm going to hold these people accountable," until he says, "I'm going to hold my law firms accountable for victim blaming, for attacking these victims, for saying we're not going to take care of these victims." It's not enough, and that's part of our goal in the lawsuit. Obviously, these kids, and they're, despite the fact that they're in their 30s, their stunted growth is reality. If you're abused in your early teens, your growth is stunted, and so they need therapy. They're getting therapy, but they're going to need lifelong therapy, and they deserve compensation for what happened to them. I mean,
Hmm.
one of our victims was threatened. His life was threatened by the perpetrator, and he had to pull out of school in his early high school years.
Hmm. You just sort of touched on this, but there's times when school districts will blame the students, whether it's about abuse or it's bullying or those sorts of things. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's the most abhorrent behavior. I mean, it is on a par with the original abuse to then blame a victim and say you were responsible, or you consented, or you were involved in this abuse, or you egged it on. I mean, you're saying that about minors. Not only are the California laws preventing you from making such an argument, but the fact that you're as a district turning around and blaming a victim that were negligent in causing the abuse is horrible. And finally, a potential light in this argument. One district out here fired their attorneys for making such an argument. Moreno Valley Unified School District just fired about 3 weeks ago their law firm for making such an argument, and I applaud them for that. That is a rare shining light in the life of a district handling
Hmm.
litigation involving kids. I wish more districts would hold their attorneys accountable, because what they say is, well, our attorneys make that argument. No, you make that argument. Your attorneys speak for you. They're your agent. If they're making an argument that kids are to blame, you are responsible. And until the districts start doing that and stop saying, "Oh, we're not making that argument," nothing's going to change. These law firms that make these arguments, and their insurers and their self-insurance that make these arguments, need to be told, this is not how we're going to approach these cases. Defend them if you want to. Defend them on whether or not you got notice, but don't attack the victims,
Hmm.
the little kids who couldn't protect themselves, because you are basically re-traumatizing the kids by saying you're at fault. And it's really intended to dissuade these victims from coming forward, which is all just simply compounds the behavior of the district and the perpetrator. You're putting yourself on the same plane with the perpetrator by essentially traumatizing the victims again.
Hmm. So, if there's a parent or a survivor listening to this and they want to pursue justice, how should they proceed?
Well, obviously, our always recommendation is, if it's no matter the situation, go to the police, go to law enforcement. Perpetrators need to be removed and put into jail. That happened with Sean Lopez. We couldn't be happier that he's serving 74 years in state prison. I took his deposition. He admitted to all the abuse. That's the right step. But obviously, California law and other states' laws are changing to allow look-back windows. California law changed to allow until you're 40 to file. lots of these victims got buried in the 80s, 90s, 2000s because there wasn't an acceptance of coming forward and reporting. I suggest everybody pursue justice and in any way you possibly can, and particularly if you felt silenced because there was a culture of cover-up in those 80s, 90s, and 2000s, because there is light, and they don't have to suffer in silence for abuse that happened long ago, and California's legislature particularly witnessed that and said we need to change the law and open up the statute for 3 years and permit cases to go forward.
Well, and I think in addition to that culture of silence or acceptance, a lot of victims don't understand what happened to them until sometimes decades later. And so it's important to, regardless of when it happens, it's important to pursue recovery, pursue justice, I guess. But unfortunately, we're out of time. Morgan Stewart, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Kyle. I appreciate it.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back.